Good morning, and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Palo Alto, where we come to transform ourselves, each other, and the world. My name's Richard Height. I am the worship associate this morning. For folks who are here, who are online here, not here, but online, you're welcome to keep your video on throughout the service. We mostly keep our audio off, but let's all unmute for just a few moments and say hello to each other, and those of you in the hall certainly wave at each other. It's good to have all of you here this morning. For our online attendees, you can see the order of service by following the link in the chat. And if you're here on campus, you can either scan the QR code, or if you haven't already, you can pick up a paper copy of the order of service at the welcome table. Also, if you are listening and watching this service online, you might get a friendly outreach from today's greeter, who is 80, or from our membership and engagement coordinator, John. You can always chat with them privately because they are co-hosts of the meeting, and please do ask if you have questions. Please do ask those questions to John or 80. We are really lucky this morning to have a very special guest at our pulpit, Reverend and Dr. Ken Collier, who many of you know from his years here at UUCPA. He was our minister here from 1991 to 2001. I was fortunate to overlap for my first few years were his last few years here, and I was very fortunate to be able to be his worship associate a few times. And it's great to have Ken back. He was, after he left UUCPA, he was the parish minister at the UU Church in Santa Barbara. He is now retired, but as everybody who's retired knows, that doesn't mean you're not busy. And Ken is very busy, and he has recently published a book, Embracing Presence and Understanding of Religion and Spirituality. So welcome, Ken. And now we will begin our service. For those of you who have a chalice at home, I invite you to light your chalice along with mine. Divine spark from sacred dark, symbol of our holy intent, illuminate this hour. Each week with our centering words, we draw on the various sources of our living tradition. Today's words are from Carl Jung. Bidden or unbidden, God is present. And now, as we follow the sound of the bell into silence, let's become centered and present in this place together. Please rise in body or in spirit, and we will sing our first hymn, which is hymn number 92 in the gray hymnals, and the words are in your order of service also. This is Mysterious Presence, Source of All, number 92. Mysterious presence. have a special announcement from my fellow Stewardship Committee member, Elsa Schaefer.
Thank you, Richard. And good morning, everybody. The Stewardship Committee, which I think I'm only representing, includes Richard, my dear friend, as well as we're led by Jack Owicki and David Chen, both of whom are the foundation, I think, of this church, along with a good number of you. And we have Isa Jacoby, Lisa Hellmans. We, of course, have Kevin, who keeps us on the straight and narrow. Beth Nord, who is here this morning. Thank you, Beth. And dear Amy. We also have great help from John Pierce, from Lynn Grant and Nina Yee, and of course the inimitable Jeff Cashdollar, without whom I think we couldn't do anything probably. The Stewardship Committee really has two jobs, but we see it as one combined, and that is to think about and watch and try to help make sure the culture of UUCPA continues to be such a warm and inviting and interesting place. Thank you to all of you for engendering that. We also, of course, look at the financial foundation of the church on an annual basis. And as you know, we're in the middle of pledging, kindly called the canvas these days. And we have had in the first weeks, we meet once a week, and John Pierce always gives us, so what happened in the last week, both in terms of numbers of pledges and what is the pledge amount coming in. And this year we have had this incredible trend line, which looks like about that. And we were so thrilled 2 weeks ago to see that it continued like that. And I have to say, we met last week and we saw a flat line. And we thought, oh no. And our hope had been, having kicked off in early February, that by now, the middle of March, we would say, great, we're there. And we wouldn't come chat with you anymore about this. But notice I'm here today. So I just, although I love being here today, this is fun, and to see all your faces. Amy, 2 weeks ago, also gave this amazing speech about where we are from a financial standpoint with the church. And we are, yes, starting to get better COVID numbers, thank heavens. There's also a new variant coming around, apparently not here yet, but we really don't know how to predict the future. And yet we've now had 2 years in a row of no rent or almost no rent. And we are at a point where we actually now have, looking forward to the coming year, a 20% gap between what we anticipate needing to spend if we just continue the way we are versus what we're going to need, again, without that rent. We no longer have the government coming in with a big rescue to help us. And that was a godsend for the last 2 years. So in the letters you've gotten and in the brochure, we've actually asked you to be able to stretch to a plus 20% for your pledging. And we know that is a big number and an unusual number for us to be actually to go to double digits. So for those of you who can, thank you so much. 2 weeks ago, though, Amy also talked with you about, and for those of you who have the ability, for whom it's not an undue stretch, we would appreciate your making a one-time only plus 50% contribution to close that gap, which we know is looming. So I'm just going to reiterate that because that was the week our trend line, sorry, I have to go your direction, kept going up, which was so thrilling for us, or such a relief for us too, I'll say. So I have 3 asks for you this morning. One is, for those of you who haven't gotten a pledge in yet, and it's about half the congregation, Jeff is here today, and he has in the office more pledge cards, just in case your card isn't traveling with you today. So if you could consider visiting Jeff in the office, that would be terrific. You can also just mail it in to 505 East Charleston Avenue, Palo Alto. And you can, on your phones, go to, phones or a computer at home, but you could even do it today. You can go to pledge at UUCPA.org, and that is a very easy way to get your pledge in. So pledge at UUCPA.org. Thank you. End of paid political or unpaid political announcement on that one. The two other asks I have, though, are that we have this wonderful committee. There's a lot of great humor in it, partially, of course, maybe largely thanks to dear Richard. You can imagine what that's like. And we actually have a lot of fun. We would love to have anybody who's at all tempted come talk to any of us and consider joining us next year. So that's ask number 2. Number 3 is we also are in the middle of what we call Canvas Conversations. And that is largely part of the stewardship end of all of what we do. And we love making sure that there's a two-way conversation between everyone in the conversation and we'll call ourselves representatives of the church, but to make sure there's a check-in with how are things going, and maybe particularly in this era of COVID. But also, if you have any feedback from the church, we would love to hear that. And sometimes it's about something you may be a little hesitant to deliver. We promise we'll keep it confidential, but we can get that information to Amy or Dan or whomever in the church might be the right person for that kind of message. We also love hearing about how wonderful the church is and how important this community is in your lives. But if you could ever join us in those conversations, I just had this weekend the two most heartening conversations I've had in a long time with some of the people that I canvass. And one was a couple who's been here for 46 years. I have not been here that long. And the high-level the three important things they made a point about were just so educational for me and so helpful, I think, for our culture going forward and for us to consider for that path going forward. And that was one conversation. And I also got to know people whom, even though we've both been here a while, whom I did not know. I actually think I'd never had a conversation with either of them. The other couple I got to talk with were parents of young children who've been here way fewer years. I also had never talked with them. And I got to meet their young son, who's about to turn 4, who was just so vibrant in coming in and out of that chat. And I've read a lot of the articles about what it's like to be a young family with a child at home and 2 working parents. But they were able to give me a much deeper sense of the issues with that as well as the positives. And both of those sort of bookends of conversation gave me so much a deeper understanding of life in general, as well as of their sense of what's happening here at the church, what it means to them, and what could be improved. So I so urge all of you to try to join us in the Canvas next year and become one of those people who interviews other. And if 100 of you stepped up to that place, we could actually have one-on-ones with every single person in this church. And I see Castor laughing. That makes me think maybe Castor will be one of those canvassers next year. Thank you, Castor. How obnoxious was that of me, I might add. Sorry. But I see a lot of familiar faces who could fill that role easily. I've got to say it's fun. It's very deepening of your understanding of who the people here are. And I'm so impressed with every single person I know that the fact that there are even more who can impress me in other ways as well as just fill my heart makes me so happy. So thank you to all of you with whom I have had and get to have conversations. Thank you so much. Remember, your pledge card can go right over to Jeff, or he can give you another one. Thanks.
Thank you, Elsa. She's just so convincing, isn't she? Makes you want to give right now. And I want to actually reiterate something that she says. Those conversations, they really can be very satisfying and fulfilling. So if you have not been contacted, or even if you have been contacted but turned down the first offer, consider having one. And if you have not been contacted and would like to have one of them, please let the Stewardship Committee know. And I guarantee you won't be disappointed. This is the time for our caring and sharing, where we share the important events of our lives that we wish to share with the community. If you have a joy or a sorrow that you would like me to speak, for those of you online, you can put it in the chat box, and if my eyes are willing, I'll be able to read them. Also, if I'm going to invite anybody here who would like me to speak something to come up and fill out a card, or since I didn't tell you that ahead of time, I will also invite those of you who want to share something to come up to the microphone if you choose. And me, unfortunately, I can't do the joy and concern email because I don't have permissions on that particular account, that particular address. So, but if you're online and you want to put something in the Zoom chat, I'll try to read it. So, is there any? Yes, Pastor.
Will you please join me for a moment in meditation and prayer? We try to find a silent black cat in an empty, dark room. We blindfold ourselves. Maybe blindness will help us to see in the dark. We grope madly this way and that, and finally declare with conviction there is no cat. Then we sit still and silent, and the black cat crawls into our lap and purrs.
That blessed mood in which the burden of the mystery, in which the heavy and the weary weight of all this unintelligible world is lightened. that serene and blessed mood in which the affections gently lead us on until the breath of this corporeal frame and the motion of our human blood, almost suspended, we are laid asleep in body and become a living soul. While with an eye made quiet by the power of harmony and the deep power of joy, we see into the life of things. For I have learned to look on nature not as in the hour of thoughtless youth, but hearing oftentimes the still, sad music of humanity. And I have felt a presence that disturbs me with the joy of elevated thoughts, a sense sublime of something far more deeply interfused, whose dwelling is the light of setting suns, and the round ocean, and the living air, and the blue sky, and in the mind of man, the anchor of my purest thoughts, the nurse, the guide, the guardian of my heart and soul of all my moral being. We'll now sing our next hymn, which is number 396 in the gray hymnals, I Know This Rose Will Open. We're going to sing this 3 times. I know this rose will open. I know my fear will burn away. I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose will open. I know this rose will open. I know my fear will burn away. I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose will open. I know this rose will open. I know my fear will burn away. I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose will open. Thank you.
I do need to say how much fun it is to be back. It's only been 20 years, hey. And that was a great wedding, by the way. I have a problem. I suspect all of your various ministers have the same problem. Most Unitarian Universalist ministers do. Here's the scene. I'm at a party or some other social event and strike up a conversation with somebody that I've never met before, a new friend. We chat about this and that, and eventually conversation comes around to new friend asking me, "What do you do?" Well, I know what's coming. So I try to move off to the side with, "Oh, I'm retired." Rarely works. Because the next question is almost always, "Oh, well, what did you retire from?" At that point, I can see it on the horizon. Well, I'm a retired Unitarian Universalist minister. Well, it may be 2 or 3% of the time they know a little bit about Unitarian Universalism, and that's good enough, but almost all the time it's not. It leads to questions like, what's Unitarian Universalism? And it's getting closer. So I start answering her questions, and there's, well, what about the Bible? Or do you accept Jesus? Or, and it's getting closer. She's circling around the 500-pound gorilla. It's getting closer. Wait for it. Here it comes. Here it comes. The question. But you do believe in God, don't you? And I'm stuck. Because there's absolutely no way to answer that question without or with any hope whatsoever of being understood, at least short of a short course in theology. But this morning, a short course in theology is clearly not appropriate, so a micro course will have to do. You see, she thinks she's asked a straightforward question, but it's not. It's a very complicated question, masquerading as a simple question. And if you'll pardon the expression, God save us from such questions. See, the word God is so ambiguous that it's almost meaningless. I mean, which God are we talking about? The God of the Old Testament? The God of the New Testament? John Calvin's God? Martin Luther King Jr.'s God, the Muslim God, the Hindu God, and if that's it, which Hindu God, and on and on and on and on. So let me outline my answer, my real answer, quickly and briefly to the question. And in true Unitarian Universalist fashion, I'll start with what I don't believe. But I promise I'll get around to what I do believe in due course. Be patient. You don't get off that easily. So to begin with, I do not believe in any kind of supreme being. I don't even understand what a supreme being might be. As I look over the things in the universe, the 10,000 things, to use a Chinese turn of phrase, I'm sorry, but I just don't see any hierarchy at all. I just see stuff, things. You know, sealing wax, cabbages, kings, Uncle Harry, Aunt Matilda, and on and on and on through the list. How any one of these things could possibly be better than or superior to another just escapes me. At least it does unless we admit that the whole idea of a hierarchy is simply our projection of human values onto the list. But then the hierarchy is not in the furniture of the universe at all. It's in us. But that means it's different from person to person and culture to culture. There's no inherent better or worse, so no supremeness to anything in the universe whatsoever. So, nope, no supreme being. And therefore, I do not believe in a God that has any human characteristics. I don't believe in a God that wills or gets angry or watches over us or gets jealous or judges or loves or hates or gets bored or anything else. These are all just projections of what we do, what we think, what we feel onto that which we neither understand nor even comprehend. See, the problem is that to communicate, we have to use language. Now, don't misunderstand. I love language. Use it all the time. But language, like all human inventions, has its limitations. Language inevitably talks about things. Talks about things. And that means there's a problem. Because language requires names, nouns. And there's a problem with naming, or if you will, nouning God. You see, nouns pick things out. For example, a ball is a small, round object that's light enough that we can play with it. A ball is not a toothpick. So when someone says, Jane picked up the ball and tossed it to Dick, we know that she did not pick up a small piece of wood used to clean the teeth and toss it to Dick. So consider, what would the word God pick out? Can't pick out anything because there is no thing which is God. Now, don't jump to a hasty conclusion. I'm not an atheist. I'm not suggesting that God is nothing at all. I'm simply saying that God is not a thing. And so you can't name God. The word God is not a noun like the word ball. And this is why the Torah forbids us from uttering the name of God. God has no name. To name God would be to make of God a thing and thus an idol. Trying to name God is idolatry, not to mention futile. So you may well be asking, what kind of word is the word God? Aha! We're getting somewhere. This is the question that leads to the short course in theology. The Buddha once remarked that he and his teachings were nothing but a finger pointing to the moon, and only a fool would confuse the moon with the finger that points to it. What does it point to then? That is the question, eh? What does it point to? Well, here is what I'm talking about. The story begins way back yonder in the early 60s when I was about 16 years old. For several years, I'd started to have some very peculiar experiences that are very difficult for me to describe. It was as if the edges of things began to soften and dissolve. And so the distinction between me and those things out there began to disappear. And at first that was pretty scary, actually, and I resisted it. But then the thunderstorm happened. Now, I was always, from the time I was about yo-high, I was always a lover of thunderstorm. I was the kid who would run out into them while everyone else was running away from them. Well, this spring afternoon, the thunderstorm hit, and it happened to be close to dinner time, and so I had to have dinner. But after dinner, I ran out into what was left of it. What was left was, in the east, there were dark clouds, right, with the remnants of the storm that was moving away. But in the west, these huge clouds were rising rapidly, rising so fast that even after the sun set, they were reflecting the light of the setting sun back down onto the earth. So it stayed light later than it normally would. And this light was this bright gold, putting a golden color over everything. And since it was lasting so long, the evening chorus of the birds lasted longer than it usually did. Finally, the clouds reached a height that couldn't go any higher, and night fell as suddenly as a hailstone. And the birds quieted, but the chorus of night frogs and crickets took up the song just at the same rate. So the level of sound never decreased, it just changed in quality. And this is what I walked out into. And the edges began to melt again. And for some reason that I'll never know, rather than being afraid of it and resisting it, I just opened myself to it. And I simply can't explain what happened next. William James called these kinds of experiences ineffable. What happened was that everything, just everything out there opened. And I saw that everything is holy. And I felt something I'd never felt before. I felt a peace, a serenity, an acceptance just descend upon my soul like snow everywhere, carefully descending, to borrow a phrase from E.E. Cummings. And remember Wordsworth now. The breath of this corporeal frame and even the motion of our human blood almost suspended. We are laid asleep in body and become a living soul, while with an eye made quiet by the power of harmony and the deep power of joy, we see into the life of things. At the center of that serenity, a serenity that embraced and folded all into a unity, I then felt a presence embracing me, and knew something I'd never understood. I knew without a doubt, without hesitation, without wondering that no matter what happens to me, be it good, be it filled with pain, I am embraced by presence. It is always with me. Bidden or unbidden, it is always with me. Wherever I go, whatever I do, whatever happens to me, through the dark night and the bright dawns of my soul, presence is with me. And so Wordsworth again. I have felt a presence that disturbs me with the joy of elevated thoughts, a sense sublime of something far more deeply interfused, whose dwelling is the light of setting suns and the round ocean and the living air and the blue sky and in the mind of man. A motion and a spirit that impels all living things, all objects of all thought, and rolls through all things. I love Wordsworth. This is the first time I had such an experience, and now, nearly 61 years later, it's as fresh in my soul as if it happened last night. I've had others since then, some less vivid, some equally, at least once more vivid. For example, several years ago, I had a dream that consisted of a single sentence spoken to me. What I heard was, "Go thou peaceful in the world, for I am with thee." So what is this presence that I experienced? Well, in the sense of science, I have to say I haven't a clue. I just don't know. Because science studies and describes things of this world, the nameable things. Presence can't be named, can only be pointed to. But there's another sense of knowing that is not about the nameable world. This is the sense that's about healing rather than describing. And it's the sense in which the Bible tells us, "You shall know the truth, and it shall set you free." The truth will heal you. This is the sense in which Wordsworth saw into the life of things. That seeing was healing. This is the sense in which the Christian asserts proudly and happily, "I know that my Redeemer liveth," for in that mythology the Christian is healed. This is the sense in which the Buddha knew release from suffering, and this is the sense in which I know the presence. So to return to new friend and the question. Well, you do believe in God, don't you? Well, I choose not to use the language of God because it is so fraught with confusion. But I do believe in that which is not of this world, but without which there is no world, and within which we are all infinite. Every single one of us is infinite because we are enveloped in it. I do believe in that presence which is the anchor of my purest thought, the nurse, the guide, the guardian of my heart and soul of all my mortal being. Is that God? Well, you decide. Having experienced presence, I find the question to be irrelevant. But I do know that we do not need to become holy. None of us needs to do that because we are already holy. And this is a contemporary version of the old Universalist doctrine that we don't need to be saved. We are already saved. What we need to do is live within the salvation, or in my language, the holiness that is already ours. Oh, and that silent black cat. Almost forgot about the cat. I also believe in that.
Thank you, Ken. It's good to have Ken back at the pulpit.
It's good to be back in it.
We create this space together, not out of wood or glass or of electricity or bytes or bits, but out of our presence. Wherever we are today, we have chosen to be together, hoping that by being together, we can do so much more to make our lives all that we dream of and make our world into the world that we hope to see. In our weekly spiritual practice of generosity, we may choose to support this community with whatever financial resources we can. There are many ways to give. The order of service has a QR code and link that you can use, and it also has information on how to give by texting. The QR code is also out at the welcome table, as is a box that you can put cash or checks in on your way out if you choose to give that way. The offering will now be given and received. Thank you. And now, please rise in body or spirit, and we will sing our final hymn, which is number 20 in the gray hymnals, Be Thou My Vision.
May the light of love shine upon you and from within you, be gracious unto you, and bring you peace. For this is the day we are given. Let us rejoice and be glad in it.
Please come up. Wow, I don't think I could get tired of hearing that. And don't be surprised if sometime in the future you hear Veronica tap the side of her piano in the middle of her playing. So I know it's coming. Please stay after the benediction for our conversation time. Those of you who are online will be invited to join small group conversations in the breakout rooms, or you can stay here in the main room. I'm going to spin up Zoom on my computer, and with luck, we'll be able to get Ken back here for those of you who are online after he has been able to talk to people here in the main hall. So now, please unmute yourself if you're online and turn on your video. And all of you here will virtually touch hands by putting your arms out or putting one hand on your heart and an arm out while we say our benediction together. Go out into the world in peace. Be of good courage. Hold fast to what is good. Return no one evil for evil. Strengthen the faint-hearted. Support the weak. Help the suffering. Rejoice in beauty. Speak love with word and deed. Honor all beings. Thank you. It's great to have all of you here today. And Ken, what a pleasure to have you back.
Absolutely. It's been fun.
Yeah, I'm glad you came.
Me too.
Wait, have you